The Crusades were an exciting yet messy time in history that spanned over centuries.
Messi doesn't even start to explain it. The Crusades were...
Bring back Constantinople!
Not
this again.
Istanbul was Constantinople, now it's Istanbul, now Constantinople, been a long...
This is why you don't get to speak.
Alright. Seriously though, go away.
We will take Jerusalem!
To understand the first few Crusades, you have to understand how people viewed Jerusalem at the time.
Most people couldn't give a diseased rat's behind about faraway lands.
Alright. They believed that if they donned the Red Cross, then they would be forgiven of their sins.
They basically thought of it as a get-out-of-jail-free card, but for hell.
It was mostly to reclaim land for the Byzantines in Syria.
And with holy forgiveness and free loot along the way, who could say no?
They managed to take the lands they came for and set up several crusade states. This was actually a fine start compared to what would come later. The Second Crusade was started when the city of Edessa was taken by Muslim Seljuk Turks from the Crusader states, and even though tens of thousands of troops were brought in, they failed to accomplish their goals.
When you think of Crusades, this is the Crusade you're thinking of. The Third Crusade is the Crusade.
That's because this crusade was like a full story. It had massive characters, intricate relations, and high stakes. It was the blockbuster of the Crusades.
Featuring stars like Frederick I Barbarossa, the Holy Roman Emperor, Philip II of France, and Richard I, the Lionhearted of England.
Despite these giants of history, they failed. Again.
Frederick I, a giant of history, destined to play a giant role in this crusade, fell off his horse and drowned in the river on the way. And that was strike one.
Richard takes the islands of Sicily and Cyprus and taxes him like crazy to fund the Crusades.
He ignored the goal of the war and ended up taking 2 Christian islands and forcing them to pay money, so strike 2.
The remains of Frederick's army and the now well-funded army of Richard met with Philip II to retake Acre, which is on the coast of Jerusalem.
And surprise, surprise!
They failed. Philip had to return because of political reasons.
Did you know that they were Pope Wars? The popes of Middle Age Europe were basically kings that ruled the area. They would often bribe their way into office and raise up armies. It got even more complicated with Holy Roman emperors also having divine power. It got even worse whenever the papacy moved to southern France for a short while and another group set up in the old city. This created anti-popes, God-forsaking anti-popes. Sounds more like a supervillain than an actual figure in history. These popes and anti-popes would often fight in holy wars. So yeah, back to boring history. And these next few were kind of boring, so lightning round!
The Fifth Crusade was called by Pope Innocent III with the objective to once again recapture Jerusalem.
Though the strategy for this crusade was to first weaken the enemy by attacking Muslim-held cities in North Africa and Egypt.
The idea that Egypt would be easier to take than Jerusalem ended up being a mistake.
There were leadership squabbles, a lack of sufficient men, equipment, and suitable ships to deal with the local geography.
The Crusaders were defeated at the banks of the Nile and returned home. The Sixth Crusade could also be called a diplomatic crusade, in which Frederick II arrived with his army at the Holy Land and won back Jerusalem thanks to his diplomatic skills.
This Sixth Crusade managed to achieve previously what 4 bloody crusades couldn't. On the Seventh Crusade, aka Fifth Crusade Part 2, King Louis attempted to capture Egypt and Jerusalem, which was now back in control of the Muslims, and despite success at capturing the Mu'tah, he was captured, then ransomed, but was still determined to fulfill his crusader vows, which led us to the Eighth Crusade.
Like the Seventh Crusade, this one was led by King Louis IX of France. His plan was to defeat the Muslims in Egypt, then reconquer or negotiate a control over key Christian sites in the Levant. Tunis was going to be the first target from where the Crusaders could then attack Egypt, but the plan was a dealt fatal blow when King Louis died of illness in August. This led to the campaign as a whole being abandoned.
And finally, the Ninth Crusade, which, who would have thought, ended like the rest of them, where they failed to retake the Holy Land and nothing happened for the 9th time.
We will take Jerusalem!
This was quite the mess and quite the roller coaster of stuff that happened, but thank you for joining us in this.
Now, who's ready for an 11th Crusade?